good morning. Welcome back to the Good Day with Olivia show here on the KAZ Radio and Television Network. I'm your host, Olivia Winstead, here serving up the good news happening right here in the city of Cleveland, keeping you informed, engaged, and connected. Cleveland, let's talk about sexual violence. Both men and women alike are victims of sexual violence, and their numbers are countless. But the Cleveland Rape Crisis Center has a vision and is initiating social change to eliminate sexual violence. I have a representative from the Cleveland Rape Crisis Center here in the studio, and a woman who has been noted for her outstanding service to survivors. I'd like to welcome to the studio this morning Teresa Stafford. Teresa, welcome to the studio.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining me. I appreciate you coming to the studio so early in the morning on a Saturday. Before we jump right into the topic and ask some background questions about you, let's talk about the cast. Okay, so we had a missed opportunity. According to a lot of people, the refs were blowing calls in gray areas, and we had a close win. But I guess we'll see what happens in the next few games to come. Go Cavs anyways. I still celebrate them, loss or no loss. We're still supporting the Cavs. So jumping right into the topic here, are you a Cleveland native?
I am. I was born and raised in Cleveland and graduated from Cleveland Municipal School District.
Okay, what school did you graduate from?
John Marshall High School.
Okay, and what neighborhood did you grow up in?
The Lee Harvard area.
The Lee Harvard area. What are some things that you like to do here in the city of Cleveland?
I love the sports teams. You talked about Cavs right off the bat. I love watching the Cavs play, and also just hanging out in Cleveland. Cleveland has some great places to eat and dine, and just walk around in the different communities. We have by the lake and also down by the museums over on Carnegie.
Absolutely. What do you love about this city, the people here? You mentioned the things that we have here to do. What is it that you love about the people here?
You know, Cleveland, if you just think of our sports fans, we have some die-hard people that are committed to Cleveland, that love Cleveland no matter what. And also we have people that are working on an everyday level on the ground, really trying to make sure that Cleveland residents have the best opportunities to succeed. And that's really where like the Cleveland Rape Crisis Center comes in, because we have been in the community for over 40 years, recognizing that individuals who experience sexual violence need access to supportive services right in the community, where they don't have to worry about the charge, they don't have to worry about people judging them, where they can feel believed and supported. And the community in Cleveland has really been able to help support the organization to keep the doors open.
What has kept you here in the city of Cleveland? You could have taken your service anywhere else. Why have you chosen Cleveland?
You know, like I said, I was born and raised here. My family is here, and I've just become connected to some really great people in this community and some great organizations that's doing some great work.
And that's what's keeping
me here.
Well, let's talk about CRCC, the Cleveland Rape Crisis Center. What is it?
Cleveland Rape Crisis Center is a standalone rape crisis center program that provides comprehensive services to survivors of sexual violence and anyone who supports them, their family members, loved ones, because what we know is that when an individual experiences sexual violence, it typically does not just only affect them. It affects their loved ones, the people that support and care for them. So we definitely provide services to those individuals as well. We typically call those co-survivors. And we also are out in the community bringing awareness to this topic, where we would like to do outreach events, community health fairs, and we have a team that's inside the school districts where we're talking about our goal is to prevent and eliminate sexual violence, and the only way we believe that can really happen is by having these real crucial conversations with youth at a very young age, so they can understand consent, healthy relationships, and understand how bullying connects directly to sexual violence.
Very interesting. Let's talk about your role. So you're more than just a representative. I just want to say that. Let's talk about what's your role. You're director of
I'm the Senior Director of Victim Services and Outreach at the Cleveland Rape Crisis Center, as well as the Cuyahoga County and Lake County Sexual Assault Response Coordinator. So part of my job is overseeing a couple of teams in the agency that provide direct services to survivors and victims of sexual violence. One team is our victim service team, and that team is a dedicated team of professionals that engage with survivors as they navigate the criminal justice system. So if a survivor reports a sexual violence to law enforcement, they never have to be by themselves. They can have a supportive victim specialist working with them throughout the entire process. This person has been trained and educated to understand the dynamics of trauma response, understand the criminal justice system, which was not really designed for victims at all, and they're able to help make sure that person is able to navigate that system with support, and also making sure that their rights as a victim of sexual violence or a victim of crimes are not violated by those individuals that they engage with. Another team is our Hogar Consuelo team. That is our team dedicated to the Hispanic Spanish-speaking community in Cuyahoga County, Northeast Ohio. That team is a team of individuals who are Hispanic, speak Spanish, and they provide counseling services as well as the victim services for those individuals that decide to report, and sometimes some outreach and also prevention. Another team that's I'm responsible for is our Project STAR, which stands for Sex Trafficking, Advocacy, and Recovery. That team is dedicated to meeting the needs, the unique and challenging, often complicated needs of individuals who have engaged in some form of sex trafficking. Human trafficking is big here in our society. Unfortunately, Ohio ranks number 4 with regards to trafficking. And we decided about 2013 to create this program because we saw that the needs of these clients were a little bit different than our other clients that was coming through the doors. So this program has its own hotline. It has professionals that staff that hotline 24/7. They're able to respond 24/7 in the community to emergency room departments, police departments, social service agencies when law enforcement or other entities identify and recover a person that has been trafficked. They're able to work with them immediately, do some crisis intervention work, and also connect them to some services. Because sometimes when those people are recovered, they have nothing. They have nothing but the clothes on their back. They don't have a place to eat, a place to sleep the next day. So they're really working with them to help provide some of the basic things that we take advantage of in life. And that team is really embedded into the human trafficking task force that we have here in Cuyahoga County, and doing some really great work. Another one of my responsibilities at the agencies is professional training. I truly believe one of the ways that we are able to respond better and meet the needs of victims and survivors of sexual violence is making sure that those individuals that they engage with in the community, whether it's a family friend that they disclose to first, a professional as a healthcare worker, social service agency, law enforcement, or even when the case gets to the prosecutor's office, that everybody's responding in a manner in which they understand trauma, that they're not judging the person for their actions or their behaviors, and that they understand how to respond back to that person to make sure that they understand that they're being believed and supported.
Wow, your service plate is pretty full, huh?
It is.
And so let's so you've been noted for your outstanding service to the community. So what did that involve? Like, how do you connect with survivors? Why was your service noted? What have you done?
I've been doing this work since about 2006, and I think I'm really truly dedicated to meeting the needs of survivors in our community, regardless of where that survivor lives, how that survivor looks, any background that survivor have. I truly believe that survivor deserves a response that is respectable, one that treats them with care, one that's not judgmental. And I'm always looking for innovative ways to increase our engagement with survivors and to make sure that when I left their life, that hopefully I was able to help them get to a better place. We know that when people engage with our criminal justice system, so many times they don't get the justice that they seek. And my goal was to make sure that they may not have got that justice, but did they feel like I supported them? Did they feel like that I believed them? Did I help get them access to other services that can help them in their healing? and then just supporting other advocates that's coming into this profession. Because it's really daunting work. It's not easy work to do every day, and making sure that anybody who's interested, who's in this field, that they understand how to take care of themselves, because if they're not healthy, they can't really be healthy for someone else.
Who does CRCC? Who do you serve?
We serve all survivors of sexual violence. We work with men. And sometimes that's a shock to people, but men are sexually violated. Ironically, we have actually seen an increase in the last few months of male survivors seeking our services.
Really?
For various reasons. A lot of them tend to have been addicted to drugs, and drugs played a part in their victimization. And people take advantage of people when they're down. Also, we serve young children. A lot of our work with the children, especially our little kids, the 6 years old and under, we could do some of that work in the home, in the community. And also when we work with little children, we work with the full family dynamics, because you just don't want to work with that child. Right. And then the parents or who's ever supporting that child to don't understand the tools that we're giving them. So working with that family dynamic so that child feels supported. Teens, teen boys, teen girls, adult women. We work with people from all different social economic classes, all gender identities, all sexual orientations. We work with anybody who's been a victim of sexual violence.
How does CRCC's service translate across the board? There are so many different people who receive your services with so many different backgrounds. How is it that your service is able to meet these individuals' needs? And their needs are so... Are they different?
They're vast. It could be different for every survivor. One of the ways that we are definitely trying to meet the needs of all survivors in the community is ensuring that our staff continuously is trained on the best practices that's out here, and that we have a diverse staff. And having that diverse staff, we're able to meet the unique needs of different survivors inside the community.
Do you have very many male staff members?
We have a couple male staff members. Yes, we do. We are not an all-women organization. We have a couple men on our organization that help out with delivering our services.
Wonderful. Let's talk about healing. How does the Cleveland Rape Crisis Center promote healing? What is it that you offer people so that they can begin to heal?
We offer people, especially in our counseling department, we offer people various different modalities for their healing process. We have trauma yoga, we have individual counseling, we have various different support groups, and then we also recognize that people oftentimes have the tools within themselves to start that healing process, and helping them recognize that they have it. And a lot of times people think when they come to an agency like the Cleveland Rape Crisis Center that they have to talk about every single detail of what happened to them. And they don't. They can unpack their trauma in the way that they feel is best for them. Our goal is to help people obtain those healthy coping skills so they can understand how to live with life now after being violated and go forward.
Very good. Can you define sexual violence to our audience? Define it. It's beyond just rape. What could you tell us? What are some other forms of sexual violence?
You got the legal definition. The Ohio Revised Code 2907 outlines sexual violence. But I think sexual violence, when you're thinking about it, it's rape. It can be penetration by the oral, vaginal, anal cavities. It can be forced. It can be force does not have to be actual physical force. It can be overtly force if they're being threatened with a gun, if the person has more power and control over them, if that person is in a position of authority over them, per se a parent, a teacher, a counselor, a coach. We also have gross sexual imposition. It was more of the touching of the erogenous zones, if somebody touch the breast, buttocks, or inner thighs of the individual, or the pubic region. And then you also have what we call when somebody solicits another individual or disseminate pictures of child pornography of minors on the internet or share pictures of that sort.
Why is it an occurrence? Why is it happening?
Well, sexual violence is really about another person having power and control over an individual. Sometimes that person is taken advantage of. And to be, let's back up for 1 second. Sexual violence is a crime of opportunity. Most people who experience sexual violence is not this scary person jumping out of the bushes. Does stranger rapes happen? Yes, absolutely so. But majority of people, especially majority of clients that we work with, they're sexually violated by someone they know, someone they love, and someone they trust. That person had access to them. It could have been, especially our little kids, they're typically sexually assaulted by somebody within a family, another peer, neighbors, somebody that's really close that had access. And there's a grooming process that takes place where that trust is built, the isolation, the secrecy, and making that you feel like they're very special. And sometimes that's why kids don't disclose right away, because they don't have the words, they don't have the tools to disclose. And you see something with adults. We see adults are sexually assaulted by people that they work with, maybe somebody they just met in a dating relationship, neighbors, somebody that they went out with, sometimes people in their circle who they may have considered a friend. So it's really, with that factor, is why it's so hard for some people to come forward, because the person that caused harm to them was somebody that they trusted.
Mm-hmm. Who's at risk for sexual violence? There are so many, you told us that there are so many different backgrounds of victims, but who's most at risk?
Our children. Our most people with the most marginalized populations, children, people from poverty, are individuals who may be addicted to drugs and alcohol, college students, our senior citizens, people from the LGBTQ community are at risk because people tend to take advantage of them more often than others, and also people who've had previous traumas in their life.
How can sexual violence be prevented, and is it possible to eliminate it?
Absolutely, it is possible. This is not something that people just do by mistake. We really need to, one of the things we need at the Cleveland Rape Crisis Center is for more schools, more community organizations, churches, to allow us inside your doors to talk about this topic, start the conversation and continue it. Really talk with the kids at a young age about healthy relationships, consent, understanding how to obtain consent, what it means to get consent in a sexual relationship, and also bullying.
That goes right into my next question here. Why is it that we so often we find that offenders are not aware that they've committed an offense or a crime, or better yet, why do we find that some victims aren't even aware that they've been abused? Like, I think of people like Charlemagne, for example. He's a DJ. He was sexually abused by his brother's wife, and he didn't even look at it as abuse. So I want to know, what is the disconnect? What do people fail to realize about consent? What don't they understand about sexual crime?
I think that's that question has like multiple questions in it. So let me try to break it down. Okay. I think for some survivors, it's a fear of going forward and not being believed. That's one of the number one things we hear from survivors, is that the reason why they don't disclose and don't report is because they have a fear of not being believed. If you look at our society, when people have come forward, they're questioned. They are often talked about. Their life is scrutinized, and they're judged for their behaviors and actions before and after they were assaulted. So sometimes people know exactly what happened to them. They just have a fear of when they come forward, what's going to happen and if they're going to be believed and supported. So it's almost easier to stay quiet than have to deal with the ramifications of how society responds to sexual violence. And when you talk about Charlemagne, we also know that when you talk about our male population of survivors, there's this thing that we have with the machismo, macho men are strong, that this can't happen to them. Even when we see our young teenage boys are sexually assaulted by teachers at school, that response is totally different. than if it was a young teenage girl that was sexually assaulted at school.
How are people responding to males who come forth?
You see that they say, oh, it's a rites of passage. Oh, give them high fives. I wish I had a teacher like that. You hear all these negative things instead of people saying, hey, how are you doing? That should not have happened to you. I'm sorry that happened to you. Let's get this youth some services so he can deal with what happened. We just look at it totally different in our society. And until we change that rape culture, this culture that victims are blamed for their victimization, that boys will be boys, the over-sexualization of women in our society, we're going to have this issue.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to talk about sexual violence beyond April. April is Sexual Assault Awareness Month. A lot of communities allow us to come in and hold events during that time in a month. But that conversation needs to happen all year long.
Now, I read an article, you talked about in the healing process of the victims, it's not so much that they're looking, maybe a case doesn't work in their favor, maybe someone, look, I was reading an article on the CRCC's website that offenders are avoiding the sexual offender registry, and they're accepting a plea deal called factually basis. I'm not sure what that means, but could you explain what does that mean for the victims, and what support do you offer them? You talked about in helping them in their healing.
Mm-hmm.
The offender is not always punished, but maybe they're getting the support they need as they're going through their case, or they're coming forth with the truth about what happened to them. How does this plea deal, how is this affecting the victims, and what's not happening? What is the factually basis plea deal? What is that? And then how do you help with the healing process when someone is not prosecuted or an offender is not brought to justice?
Okay. So when individuals go forward in the criminal justice system and their charges are indicted, a lot of times they're indicted for a sex offense. It could be rape, kidnapping that's connected to the rape, or gross sexual imposition, sexual battery, any of those other numerous charges. What we tend to see at times, though, for various different reasons, is that some cases are pled off of what we call the sex offender tree, which means that they are pled down to a non-sex offense, maybe assault, kidnapping that doesn't have the sexual assault base to it, just something that's not a sex offense. Do some survivors want that? Absolutely. Because maybe they don't feel that they are in the position mentally where they can go forward into testifying in court. Because to testify in court, you have to testify typically in front of the offender, the person that caused harm. You have to testify in front of a jury who makes a decision. And there's not a guarantee that there's going to be a guilty verdict. So some survivors that I worked with and we worked with, they're very comfortable with that. And then sometimes, the prosecutor's office make a decision that a plea is going to be in the best interest of the case and the community. Victims are to be notified of that plea, get some input, and that's what we really believe, that victims should have some input into that. But some cases just don't go forward into prosecution, and that's where that factually based plea come from. How do we support survivors in that moment is from the very beginning when we're working with them, we start having a conversation about the criminal justice system process, about what they can control and what they can't control in it, and helping support them around those factors. The other thing that we do, the other thing is that when we're thinking about a trauma-informed system, a justice system prosecution, a successful prosecution at the end, is not justice for every survivor. I've stood up there with survivors whose perpetrator may have been sentenced to 10, 15, 20 years, and at the end, because how the system responded to them, they still felt victimized. They didn't feel like they got their justice. So I think for some survivors, justice comes from how the first person that they disclose to responds to them, believes them, supports them, and help them along the path. we have to get to a place in our society where we do have a system that's responding appropriately to survivors, but it's just not that plea at the end. And we do need accountability. Accountability is important when you're talking about sex crimes.
Let's talk about human trafficking. What is it, and how is it? How is it affecting the city of Cleveland?
Well, human trafficking, it is basically modern day slavery. It is the selling of individuals for sexual exploitation or forced labor.
Where is it happening? Where is it happening here in Cleveland, and how can you identify it? Like, how can you know it when you see it?
Well, this is what I would say. People tend to think that this is only an inner city issue. It is not. Human trafficking is happening in every corner of Cuyahoga County. In our suburban communities, in the inner city of Cleveland, it's happening all over. Solon, Independence, 55th and St. Clair, wherever, it's happening. A couple ways that you identify human trafficking. Well, who's at risk with human trafficking? What we're seeing is that teens who have run away or left home for various reasons, they're at risk. We also see individuals who engage in systems, whether it's the criminal justice system, foster care, Department of Children and Family Services. Those youth are really at a high risk. We also noticed that a lot of the individuals that we have engaged with that have been trafficked, they had a previous history of sex abuse before they were trafficked. And also, another high population that we're seeing is individuals addicted to drugs.
How do you report human trafficking? Or what's the safest way for a victim to reach out for help?
There's a couple ways you can call and contact your local police department. The police response is different from what it was years ago. When years ago, people used to look at these individuals as criminals. Today's response is that these individuals are victims of a crime that may be engaging in criminal behavior. And so their first thing when they reach out to law enforcement is that they want to make sure that they're okay. They can also reach out to the Cleveland Rape Crisis Center, call Project STAR. It's on our hotline. You could text and chat, reach out and touch base with one of those advocates, and they will be able to help an individual through the entire process of getting to a safe place. But look, human trafficking has very different faces of it. One of the things that we see a lot of times is young teenage girls who are disconnected from school. These individuals might have an older boyfriend that's moving them around. They are staying in hotels, traveling in packs sometimes. We also see that these young individuals are not able to speak up for themselves. They have to look to the person who's with them before they can answer questions. We also see if you're working with a youth and you see that they're all of a sudden have more expensive items than they previously had, and you know their social economic status in their family hasn't changed, that could be a possible red flag as well.
Why is it so? Now this is just about sexual violence in general. So human trafficking, rape, molestation. Why is it so hard for people to come and ask for help? You explain in detail why it's so hard for men, because some people, like, it's brushed off for them and just considered a rite of passage, but for other people, or for anyone, why is it so hard initially coming out?
It's embarrassing. The shame, the stigma attached to it. No one wants to be a victim of anything. And the fear that when they do come forward, they won't be believed. And the re-victimization that many survivors experience once they do disclose. So sometimes you will see that people will hold it for many years before they disclose their abuse.
What part of your life has inspired your service? And what's your purpose in life? Have you identified a purpose in your life?
Absolutely. My purpose is definitely to stay working in this field in some form or fashion, making sure that our society response to sexual violence is different in the years to come, making sure that survivors of sexual violence, no matter where they live, they have access to comprehensive services that can help them in their healing process. And all survivors, our most marginalized survivors, women of color, children, people who are addicted to drugs, LGBTQ, our male survivors, just making sure that we as a society are ready to respond and meet their needs.
Let's talk about some, as we're closing out, I would like to talk about Sing Out. What is that? And is that contributing to the healing process of the victims?
Absolutely. Sing Out is an opportunity every other year that we have at the Cleveland Rape Crisis Center, where community leaders come together to sing in our chorale and help us raise money to make sure that we're able to meet the unique needs that survivors in Cleveland have and Cuyahoga County they have. We raise a lot of money, and what it really does is show survivors that people care about them, people believe them, people want to support them, and they're not alone.
What's your message to anyone listening out there who is suffering or who's been abused? What do you want them to get out of this interview?
That I am sorry, the Cleveland Rape Crisis Center is sorry, the community is sorry that they experienced what they experienced, that they are not alone. We believe you, and it's never too late to get that support and help. Call our hotline, 216-619-6192, and it's never too late. It could have happened 5 days ago, 30 years ago, whenever. It's never too late to get the help to live a healthy life.
Well, there you have it, Cleveland. The Cleveland Rape Crisis Center is here for you. Reach out for help. You've been watching Good Day with Olivia. This is Olivia signing off.